Hello and welcome to Morning Fuel. I am your host, John Bundy, and you are here because you believe in the power of the spoken word and its ability to change lives, and that by sharing our stories, we can help others overcome challenges that they cannot overcome on their own. Whether it's a victory you need to win in business or in your own personal life, you understand that answers can be found in listening to others who are willing to share their stories, knowing that their story ultimately doesn't belong to them. All right, today's guest is the creator of the Dream Success Strategy, an elegant system designed to help business owners and entrepreneurs achieve their goals. She empowers phenomenal female coaches, business leaders, and creative entrepreneurs who want to create a six-figure business plan that's based on authenticity and innovation. Expert dream catcher, Marilen Crump. So glad you're here.
Hi, John. I am very excited. And I just want to make a side note, too, because I do have a lot of people that may not be running a business per se, but these definite practices would help anybody who wants to achieve something in their life.
So that if they have personal goals, this will help them with that.
Yeah, and I can really help people on a granular level, because sometimes we're like, I don't even know if I can get out of bed right now. You know?
Oh, sure.
And sometimes it just is that extra oomph of understanding that may make your day better.
Baby steps that'll lead to bigger things.
Yeah,
right?
Whether it's in parenting or just showing up for something that you've committed to that's not even work related. It could really be anything.
Okay, well, talk to us about parenting.
Parenting.
I want to know who is this Marilen Crump, and how many kids do you have?
I have 5 kids, and they all range in age. Currently, at this moment, we have 2 in elementary, 1 in middle, 1 in high school, 1 in college. So it's a unique challenge.
You've got the spectrum.
We're trying it all out.
The prism.
Kind of like when I gave birth, I was like, this hospital, that hospital. So, yes, so I've sampled it all.
Before you got to the right one?
Let's go here first. Let's try Hampton. Let's try Newport News. Now let's try. Right. But yeah, my children are amazing. I have also just the uniqueness of being a parent to special needs twins who are nonverbal autistic. However, I'm going to change that label because I want them to be verbal, and I think that they're going to be working their way
wonderful
into that at some point.
Okay.
But
you're helping them to achieve their goals too.
Yes, exactly. And they can't voice their goals at this moment, but I think that's you're talking about parenting. That's part of like the magic of parenting, is that helping anticipate what your children might need so that you can build in the right experiences. You have to see yourself as a curator, right? And I think sometimes people see themselves as more of a dictator. But I try to say, if I'm curating a life for others around me, what's my responsibility to make sure that those things that's in my control definitely can happen and could be part of what brings them up into something beautiful and confident for their future.
Now, your twins are your youngest?
Yes.
Okay. I have a 26-year-old. And I also have an 18-year-old, so 6 years between the two of them. How different was your parenting over your first, who is now in college?
Well,
or graduated from college. How old is your oldest?
She's 20.
20, okay.
And she's trying to accelerate herself. Like, she wants to graduate in just 3 years.
Okay.
And it's funny because kids come with their personalities.
Yeah, they do.
And
they're all different.
And I think as parenting goes, maybe it's just more I like the word elegant. You'll hear me say that a lot. Maybe I'm just more elegant in my parenting, whereas in the beginning, you're kind of rough around the edges. Like, am I doing everything right?
Sure.
Also, the relationship I was in at the time. So my older 2 are from my previous husband.
Okay.
And that dynamic changes how you parent.
Oh, it certainly does.
As well, right? Yeah. So it depends on what kind of team environment you have and whether you feel supported with the choices that you're making as a parent. And we butted heads a lot. So it definitely was not meant to be a long-term partnership.
Sure.
Because we didn't see a lot of the things the same. So I think I was probably more holding back on some of the creative ways I could parent because of that relationship that I was in. So there's definite differences. And I think if you compare like a neurotypical child versus somebody who has other needs, that's a whole different level itself. And teenage girls are also they can be very challenging.
I heard that. I heard that. Now, my experience was different. I don't know if it was because I was determined to prove everyone wrong, but I remember hearing how terrible the teenage years were going to be. And I saw it. I mean, I'm the oldest of four, and I have my younger siblings are all girls. I saw the teenage years. I did not see that in my girls. Now, my oldest, I believe, is a late bloomer. So in her 20s, she kind of went through this little rebellious kind of, wanting to prove herself type thing. It's great. That's wonderful. My youngest has always been like a friend that wants to do what her dad is doing. So there's always been that interest. So totally different people.
Yeah.
But I look at my oldest and I see myself because I was the oldest. And your oldest, no matter what kind of plan you have, no matter what the plan, no matter how the tried and true, tested plan, you're gonna have to throw some of that out the door with, depending on who the personality, like you were talking about,
It's
of the
personality, yeah. And I think she definitely, my oldest, Sahara, is just she was already her own person as a little person,
Right?
And I was always fascinated by her,
Right?
Like feeling like she was, the parent in the situation.
Sure.
And it's funny now because I call her mom, and she wears like this like college sweatshirt that says mom on it, because she's always had that kind of like she's in charge. And it's not in a bad way. She just has this personality that kind of is like she just knows how to deal with things around her.
That's cool.
Whereas I'm always like, when I was that age, like, what? Am I doing something right? Am I doing something wrong? She's more of that kind of, let's go here. I'm like, okay, mom. Like, we went to New York for her 18th birthday, and she was the one like kind of leading the way. I'm just hanging onto her arm.
Right.
There's
a certain
it's
kind
enjoyable.
of freedom in that, isn't there? I mean,
Yeah.
to be able to, that's cool. That's cool. So you, 5 kids.
5 kids.
And all totally different people. Don't they get funner the older they get? Do you find they get funner? More interesting?
Well, I think it's like I try to stay in the moment too. Like I'm just always intrigued. Like I'm always discovering something about them, something about myself. So I can really see all the benefits in every age they hit. My son, my oldest son, he's a senior right now, and they pretty much disappear senior year, I think, because they're with friends and stuff, and you kind of have to let them be. So anytime we do get an interaction, I'm like, oh, what? You're doing what? I'm always excited for that. I think definitely we're going to cross another threshold once they become real adults. And I think that's going to be fascinating. But because we're experiencing the whole realm right now, it's like, I don't have a reminiscence yet of when they were younger, because we still have young ones.
Right.
And technically the way they're expressing themselves, the twins, they're more kind of leaning towards if they were kind of like just coming out of toddlerhood, right? So in the way we're still engaging and interacting, it's still more in that phase of like, would you like this? Would you like that? Like how you would talk to a toddler, even though they're 8 years old, right? Because of just how that's, coming together. So I don't know. I think I'm very aware that, I'm trying not to have an expectation.
Sure.
And then also just for any of the kids, I think that's the gift that the twins had brought, is that you aren't trying so hard to parent. Like you're just being a part of the whole experience, So
well, okay. So we talked about Marilen, the mom. You're also a wife and a friend, and you're also a business owner. How did that journey start? The business owners start? I mean, did you work for people ever, or did you just go into business for yourself?
When I was younger, one of the things that I loved to do was sing and dance, and I would be shy about it. My mom would say, hey, perform for me and I'll pay you $1, right? And I'm like, okay. But she was testing me because then she would like loan me out to her friends and say, oh, you're having a birthday party for your 3-year-old. Marilen can come over and sing. And she would make me these costumes.
That's great.
Had a Pocahontas costume. Like this was way back in the day. And so I'm like begrudgingly, you know, because I wouldn't like.
Oh, you didn't want to do it? You
No,
didn't like it?
I was shy. I was an introvert. And I was like, what is going on? But, you know, the promise of you'll get paid. And so my mom was like really kind of shoved me out there. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I got used to monetizing my talents. And so I would meet these younger than me kids. And I wasn't a virtuoso by any means on the piano, but I would meet them in the neighborhood. And I would say, I have a piano. Do you want to learn? I would talk to their mom. And then I would get paid to teach them for like 30 minutes right after school. So I'm like, hey, I'm earning money. Yeah. I used to also draw a lot. So I would sell my drawings at school because back in the day, we didn't have phones. So if you wanted to send someone a love note, it was on paper. So I would draw love notes or rewrite love notes for people and get paid ice cream money, you know, for that. And I'm like, this is cool. So
that's a lot more funner than the way we made money in school, and that's buying like a bag of blow pops and then selling them for like 50 cents and making more money and stuff like that.
Like the fundraisers, yeah. So, you know, that just started churning in my head. And at that same time, I was 17 and Netscape came out and this whole internet thing was becoming something. And so I was like teaching myself code. And so by the time I got to college, I got an on-campus job, part of my financial aid stuff to help pay for room and board because I actually got a academic scholarship. So I was like, yay. But it was neat. Like, I'm getting paid to learn this new computer language. Like, what is that? And then I was helping people with their job resumes because part of the departments I worked at was public relations and career services. And so just being in those two fields, I'm like, wow, I'm helping people sell themselves and I'm learning how the college is publicizing what they're doing and tooting their horn just so that they can get more attention. So I'm putting this all in my knowledge field. You'll hear there's a lot of things that I do. Okay, so then my dad gave me a camera, that's a film camera, A1 Canon, and I had to learn the film way of developing stuff. And I would be in these classes, theater classes in college, and people were like, oh, I love your camera. Can you take my picture? I need a headshot for my next audition. And I'm like, okay, sure. Just give me a roll of film. So people give me the roll of film, develop it, and they were happy with it. And then another person would come up and say, I love the pictures that you did of so-and-so. I want to give you a roll of film and $20. I'm like, what? So all these like
you get to do what you love
opportunities
to do and get paid.
Yes, since I was young, all these opportunities just kept coming along where people were like, I'll pay you for that. And I'd go, you will? Like, what? Okay. So then $20 becomes bigger, right? And then an agency calls me and says, oh, we really love the pictures that you took of Sarah. Do you have a price list that you could give us so that we can recommend other actors to you? I'm like, no, I don't right now, but I'll get that over to you. I started calling up all these other photographers, you know, around the state and be like, how much do you charge for headshots? Like, I don't know, because it wasn't a business plan. And then that started. So I would get these assignments from agencies. I was also doing promotional modeling at the time and doing like commercials because I was just like, anything that was fun, I'll do it.
Right.
And every time I would have fun, I was getting paid for it. So I was getting paid for acting in commercials, modeling for stuff. Like what was neat about promotional modeling was that the brand would send you a kit. So I remember modeling for Listerine back when they had those little gel things that you could stick on your tongue.
Yeah.
They sent a whole big box of that, but they also give you a whole binder that's a script. You have to learn all the ins and outs on how to sell it.
Right.
So I'm learning marketing inadvertently, right?
You're doing influencer type marketing, right?
Yeah, they dress you up,
right?
You know, one was like La Creme yogurt. They gave us like French maid outfits, and we were in DC handing out yogurt on a hot day.
Right.
And I was like, I see how they're doing this. So I'm studying every time. So I'm in commercials. I'm studying what's going on behind the camera. Mm-hmm. I'm studying like the script, like how how are they putting the script together? What am I saying right now?
Yeah, there's a different type of brain that looks at a television commercial and goes, how did they pull that off? Whereas everyone else is getting sold to, and you're learning, you're like, could I do that?
Yeah. So it was really fascinating. And then I learned systems from being in that film industry too, because they would have a call sheet, a production sheet, and they would have all the things that would be happening. So from this team to that team, and things had to get done. And if it didn't get done, at the end of the day, they would kind of, circle back and say, okay, now we got to rework this whole ledger so that the next day will go smoother. Or if it got rained out, when do we reschedule this? So seeing that process where they would stay up and they'd wake up early just to get it done because time was money.
Right.
I was like, that's fascinating. So I've just been a collector of things. So by the time I graduated college, I said, well, I don't think working for anybody is going to help with all the stuff I know now. It's like it needed to go somewhere. I felt like a full tick, I just needed to do something. So I started my brand Art Inspired, a senior in college. I did photography. I was doing marketing work. I was building websites, HTML coding them because it was still back in the day, film photography. So everything was harder and arduous.
Like pre-WordPress?
Totally. Yes, it was Homestead, I think was the server I was using. Yeah, and I was making animated GIFs out of code. It was like wild because the process was painstakingly long. If you got one dot wrong, the whole page would go,
yeah,
and you're like, okay, where did I go wrong? But that taught me how to stick to things,
Sure.
And then right after that, I was recruited to teach ballroom dance in Richmond. And then I went on tour with Theater for America. So I did like a national theater tour. And I was working the sound operating part.
How old were you at this time?
I was 21, 22. I actually turned 21 junior year of college.
Okay, so that was just like 4 years ago?
Yes. Yeah, and so it just kept piling on. It was a neat time frame and universe I was living in, before kids and all this stuff, just like achieving a lot of wonderful things.
So, all right. So that's your origin story. That's the start. That's the start.
Yeah.
We got to hear about that shy young girl that didn't want to do this thing. Yep. Mama, but wait a minute. I can get paid to do that. I can, have my own money. This is great. What about a huge hurdle or roadblock or failure that happened along the way that could have taken you out? So this is our what the fail moment in the our WTF moment in the podcast. Talk to us about that I don't know, tragedy or something difficult that happened that maybe changed your trajectory or taught you something.
Sure. I think the major one that always sticks out was my junior year. I had declared biology as my major because I was still trying to fit the mold that my parents and everybody's society was expecting me to do, which was you're very smart, you have this scholarship, go pre-med and become a brain surgeon, right? Like there was this path already laid out. I failed a statistics class, not because I didn't understand it, I just wasn't trying. But then also I was like, well, I can withdraw. They didn't let me withdraw, and I got so upset and mad that I was just like, oh, my life's over. At that stage in your life, this is, if I can't begin it right, what's left of life? Well, the wonderful chaplain we had on campus, she was like, okay, if you never fail in your life, what kind of advisor, think about when you're a grandmother, if you're helping your grandchild, they're upset about something, maybe they failed at something. And what are you going to say? Oh, I've never failed. Good luck.
Right.
And so I was like, what? Like no one mentioned that to me, that part of your failure, like you're talking about here in these podcasts, is that it becomes someone else's story. That as you pick yourself up from those failures, that you become relatable and you can be a trusted source on how to give people their motivation back or just confidence. And so that just like echoed so loud at that moment.
I survived.
That I was like, oh, she brought me into real life now. Like now I can live my life, because what she was really also saying was, you're also failing because you're not brave enough to live the life you want to live. And just having that realization so early on.
Ooh, what a good point. You're not brave enough to live the life.
And I wasn't. Being an introvert, I was still,
Okay.
I was still waiting for people to push me. And if they weren't pushing me and they pushed me towards something else, I would still willingly go and do it. Because remember, that's how my mom pushed me into
Right.
that. And I never relied on myself to push myself.
Right.
And once you take the leap, so I didn't tell anybody I changed majors. And I had to take like the last 3 hours, like I self-designed it and got all the classes that I wanted. It was like taking 21 hours
Okay,
the last
so you're a
three.
biology major, and then you switched to...
Creative arts,
Right.
like interdisciplinary
Right.
arts major. So instead of a Bachelor of Science, it was going to be a Bachelor of
Gotcha.
Arts. And it said interdisciplinary arts because it was like all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm walking across to get my diploma.
Wait, you still hadn't told anybody?
Didn't tell my parents.
Oh.
And they're like,
I wish-
Bachelor of Arts.
I wish they had a
interdisciplinary.
camera
Oh,
recording
my
your
gosh.
parents' face.
Yeah, my dad did not talk to me for like 3 days.
Wow.
And then when he finally said something, he said, I guess it's done. And I was like, yes, it is.
You are correct, sir.
It is done. Yeah. And so, then there's this dynamic that we've always had where it's like a push and pull, like, people telling me, why don't you just work in computers? You know code, you're smart.
Right.
And back in the day,
That's the only way you can make money.
this was like .com before the bubble popped. It was like people were offering ridiculous money just to be involved in a team,
Right.
which I did a few stints. Like I had a few side projects where people were like, hey, just sit at the table. We're paying $70 an hour. I'm like, okay, like I'll
Yeah.
sit. And that bubble popped. And then in another moment where you say, where did I fail? It wasn't so much it was my failure, but it stuck with me as well. Well, I had a lot of friends who took the route that I was supposed to take. And they were working for places like Bose Hamilton and all these things in D.C. They had 401ks. And I'm like, I'm an artist. I don't have insurance. Well, I would go to D.C. for some of this modeling stuff every once in a while. And then they would let me stay over, right? Because they had all the money. They were partying it up. Weekends were like, woo-hoo. I went there one day, and they weren't supposed to be home, like some of my friends. And they're sitting there on a couch just staring at the TV, and I pop in like, hey, everybody, what's up? I'm here. I'm visiting from Richmond, And they're just like staring at the TV. No color in their faces, no expressions. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, something happened in the world, like I'm not aware. That day, they all lost their pensions, their 401ks. It was like that whole, thing where all these people were
Right.
being laid off.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
their self-worth,
Right.
it just changed in an instant. They weren't the people with the money anymore, with the secure job, gone. And I just remembered like being so detached from how they were feeling and being like almost happy. I didn't want to be happy, of course. Like it wasn't, maybe that's the wrong word, but I was relieved that I didn't choose that life. Or I would have been so attached to the job title, the benefit structure, the 401k. Whereas I've always been kind of like, growing and building who I am, because getting rejected in auditions is another great way to learn like, oh yeah, okay, next audition. You just learn to be rejected in a way when you're an entrepreneur or a performer. And I think there's
Where you're surprised when you get the yes.
yeah, or you're overjoyed, and then you treat it like, wow, this is the most special thing. But I think when you go into corporate, you're lulled into thinking that this is like going to be forever, and that they're going to treat you right, and they're going to treat you like a person.
I remember hearing over and over again that I needed to get the job with the company that has the retirement plan, that one day you'll work there and I remember that sounded like death to me.
Oh gosh.
To be
yeah.
stuck in one company for 40 years and then retire. And I avoided that like the plague. I don't think I've ever worked for one employer longer than 4 years. Because while I'm there, I'm looking for my way out. Okay, because I'm creative.
Yeah.
And this is so boring, especially when I worked at the shipyard. My job in the machine shop as a water jet operator, ooh, I got to cut metal with water and garnet. Awesome, right? Cool. Was load the program, load the water table, push a button. 2 hours later, 3 hours later, the thing's finished cutting, and then I get to do some more work. So the whole time, that whole 2-3 hours, I am writing business plans. I'm coming up with creative ideas. I'm drawing. I'm trying to figure out, what's next. And wow, that's yeah. So
Yeah.
so a lot of times it is that decision that we make years ago, that long time, and then we get laid off. And
Yeah.
we had no plan B. There was no other plan. That's horrifying.
Yes.
Your whole life was based on that. You've already seen that future, and then all of a sudden the future's gone.
Yes.
Wow.
And people can suffer deep depression.
Oh, yeah.
Because of those kinds of outside forces. Now, am I saying that everybody should be an entrepreneur?
No.
And I think some people have found their like wonderful job, and then they have these other things that keep them like just super in tune with the rest of their life. And it's like such a great benefit that they have like a very stable environment that fits their personality and their skill sets. So you've heard me mention the word ikigai before, and you ask yourself 4 questions like, what do you love? What are you good at? What can you get paid for? And what does the world need? And that's kind of where you could start kind of dialing into a purpose. Sometimes that changes, right? So what you love may not be what you love 10 years later. And you have to give yourself permission to reinvent and refine that new focus and purpose. And we're doing it right now with the twins because retirement is going to look way different for my husband and I compared to how we thought of it before with having just neurotypical children. And I'm sure that would happen to anybody who, let's say, had somebody injured, and world changes because of mobility issues, all these other things. But
Or is taking care of an elderly parent.
Correct. So there's all these things that if you're not already working in how you approach change or your willingness to look at new opportunities, that might be a very difficult shift. Whereas I think what entrepreneurs have to get used to, and people who are kind of building their own lane, you have to know that it's not going to be perfect, that things are going to come into that environment where it's going to challenge you. But it's how you react to the challenge is what's going to keep shaping your life in great ways, right? And you're going to be like, man, I'm so glad. Like that was
Right.
the path I took,
Right. Wow. So the essence of the Morning Fuel podcast and the name and everything has to do with a challenging time that I had in my life pre-2019, where I was dealing with depression and anxiety after losing the job at the shipyard and after losing my dream job in a restaurant working for a James Beard-nominated chef.
Oh, wow.
I lost both of those within a month. And I went into this depression thinking of my family homeless because I couldn't work it out to get another job quick enough that paid as much. So in that was born a morning routine, listening to Gary Vaynerchuk, listening to Hal Elrod, Miracle Morning, and coming up with the morning routine. That was the morning fuel. That was part of it. The biggest part of it was my relationship with my faith, my relationship with my God, because I did pray. I never lost hope, though I felt hopeless for a very long time because of it was that job. It was that, okay, how long am I going to have this job? Is this going to, so what is Marilen Crump's morning fuel? What gets Marilen up in the morning? What keeps you going throughout the day? What gets you through those hard times right now?
I would say journaling is a big part of just being in tune with like how I want to approach the day and how I want to pray about the day. And if I have that, then it's almost like I've already gave myself a sense of peace. And so the next choices are normally a lot easier. It's easier when you don't have a lot of like little people. So I can relate to maybe some moms who are like, I just don't have time for myself, So sometimes like fuel in itself is carving out the time and saying like, even though it might be a struggle, I might want to wake up like at least 20, 30 minutes before everyone else. So I can just have my brain to myself before I start engaging it with the world around me. So it's almost like if you can't refuel then you're kind of running on empty, and then that's where struggles come about that could have been avoided, in my opinion. So that's great. If I can really do my morning the way I would love to do it, I'd probably wake up with enough time to exercise too, because you have good intentions during the day. I might put a workout here in the schedule, but then there's a need that arises, and that's going to be pushed aside. So I think for my own physical health, I need to fuel that. So I've started changing my diet too, just to kind of say I need nutrition to fuel me, right? Mm-hmm. So there's all these biological factors that when you are also, maturing in age as well, that you have to be aware of, that in order to fuel yourself properly, that would be a thing. Motivationally, I think if I know where I'm heading in the near future, what I'm building, that's motivation enough. I think if I'm confused at any point, I get irritated and aggravated. Yes, Marilen gets irritated and aggravated. I try not to, because I know that there's nothing that would result technically in anything productive, being frustrated. But that moment of frustration, I'm allowed to ask myself some questions.
Oh, sure. What are you so frustrated about? What are
you going to change? Are you wanting to keep being frustrated? And I tell a lot of people who, I have conversations with, I said, I don't want to suffer the same way twice. That's my quote. I don't want to suffer the same way twice. Now, I might experience it again, but normally the next time I experience it, I'm not suffering like I did the first time, because one, I know maybe what the cause of that was, or how I can maybe fix it this time. And even if I don't fix it the third, fourth time, I'm not going to suffer about it, right? But if I find that I've suffered the same way again, I obviously didn't learn a lesson.
Okay.
Or I didn't take the time to resolve what was the issue in the first place, right?
Right. Well, Marilen, before I ask my last question, how can people reach out to you? How can people get involved with what you're doing?
Well, I'm always open to conversation. I tell people, you can find me pretty easily on Facebook mainly, and you can DM me there. If you look up the hashtag Expert Dreamcatcher, it should give you different content. And my mission this year is to make sure that I'm fueling that with more content. So just stay connected. If you're connected through John, then I'm definitely connected here. And so any which ways that's convenient.
Cool. Very cool. All right, last question. Marilen Crump, mom, friend, business owner, pioneer. What do you need most right now?
What do I need most right now? I think I'm always guided by my own faith. I feel like when I have that, then I'm not in need of so many things, that I'm more accepting. Sometimes I think we have our arms crossed. And we have to be careful and just being aware. So faith gives me awareness, and it gives me that kind of peace I need to just keep my arms open like that. Even if you talk about like yoga poses, some people don't want to hold their arms out or open themselves up, right? And I think we all need to make sure that, again, if we're doing it in a healthy way, that we're not always just closed off and being too hard in our opinions or hard in our emotions. Like opening faith is a big deal.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Marilen, really great to know you. Thanks again for coming on the show. And we did one show first season. So back in 2019, you were on the show for the first time. It's definitely evolved since then. But thank you so much for being who you are, being a part of my life and my family's life. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, John.